Now our unit 6 is about probability. You can see we're going to be doing probability, but for today's lecture, we're going to even talk about what probability and sample spaces are. Now, probability is the long-term relative frequency of the outcome. So remember back in the days, as in unit 1, remember when I will give you guys a number, or like a list of numbers. Let's say I had like a 1, a 3, a 3, a 5, a 7, a 9, so on and so forth. And then we will say we will create lists, right? Remember we used to do, let's say from 1 to 3, from 4 to 6. That was another one. And let's say from 7 to 9. And remember we used to count them. Remember we used to do that. So from 1 to 3, for example, we'll have 3 numbers. From 4 to 6, I had 1 number. From 7 to 9, in this case, I have 2 numbers. Let me fix my 9 over here. Okay. Remember we used to do those the tallies, and then we even used to come and say, all right, I have a total of 6 numbers. So from 1 to 3, I have 3 out of 6 numbers. And then we will see it as a fraction, 3 over 6, or we even saw it as a decimal. Remember 0.50. And then from 4 to 6, I have 1 out of 6, and then I have 2 out of 6. Remember we used to do those? Okay, so that was what we call the frequency. Now, a probability is the long-term relative frequency of the outcome. So the long term. Now, in this case, we're going to be looking at this as a decimal. Let me clear this out that I have here in the screen. Let me clear that out. So we're going to be seeing it as a decimal. Now, to be honest, our decimal is going to be in between 0 and 1. So let me do a little chart over here, a little line. And I'm going to say 0 and 1. So it's going to be a decimal. So matter of fact, I'm going to be looking at this as in 2 decimal places. So the decimal right in the center between 0 and 1 is going to be like 0.50. In some cases, people call this 0.5. It's the same thing, right? So 0.50, so we're in the middle. We have 0.25 about here and 0.75. So if I see this as a decimal, I see it like that. I can also see it as a percentage. Each of those numbers multiplied by 100. So I'm looking in between 0 and 100%. So I have 25%, 50%, 75% in the middle. I see 25% here, 50%, and 75%. Now, what does this numbers actually mean? Now, 0%, it is for sure that is not going to happen. And then what's the probability that today is going to be sunny all day long, day and night? 0%. It is for sure. It is not going to happen. 1 in decimals, 1 or in percent, 100%. That means it is for sure going to happen. Now, in between here, 0.25, it means it is unlikely for this to happen. Right? It's very close to 0. It is unlikely for this to happen. 0.75, see how it's close to 1? I'm saying it is likely it will happen. We sometimes we watch the news and then we look for the weather. Imagine I come over and I'm watching the weather. It says there's 25% chance of rain. 25%. So as a decimal, 0.25, as a percent is 25%. I'm like, oh, that is unlikely to happen. So when I see 25% chance of rain, more than likely is not going to rain. Right? It could rain because sometimes we've seen them on the news. They're wrong sometimes. So they could be wrong, but probably it is not going to rain. Now, if they tell me 0.75% chance of rain, I'm going to say probably it will rain. Now, 0.50, this is what we call unsure. That means we don't know. So if I'm watching the news and they tell me that's 50% chance of rain, they're basically telling me it will rain or it will not. They have no idea. Sometimes they don't want to say 50. So they might say a number close to 50, like there's 40% chance of rain. There's 60% chance of rain. That's basically telling me I don't know. I'm unsure what's going to happen. So now this percentage is what we called our probability odds. It's usually when we see it as a fraction, because we could see this as a fraction, any of these numbers I can make it into a fraction. Let me just draw a fraction here. And I'm going to say the number on the top are my favorable outcomes. Okay, so let me even write that. The fancy word, favorable. Favorable outcome. So this is what I want. Okay, this is what I need. My favorable outcomes. The number at the bottom are my possible outcomes. Usually, if I do things correctly, the favorable, it's a number smaller than the possible. So that's why I said your decimal, it will always be in between 0 and 1. So my probability odds are favorable outcomes divided by possible outcomes. We can write it as a decimal. We can write it as a fraction. We can write it as a percent. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be working with all three later today. So let's take a look at an example here. You're picking marbles out of a bag without looking. The contents of the bag are 4 orange marbles, 8 yellow marbles, and 5 orange marbles. Now, what is the probability of selecting a yellow marble? Okay, so I have orange, and I have 4 orange and 5 orange. I guess I have 9 orange marbles, but that's not what I want. I'm not looking for orange marbles. In this case, I'm asking what's the probability of selecting a yellow marble. So I'm gonna ignore those orange marbles, and I'm just gonna be looking at here that says I have 8 yellow marbles. Notice how I underline the marbles that I don't need, and I highlighted the marbles that I do need. So that's what we're going to call the favorable marbles or favorable outcome. Okay, so I have 8 yellow marbles, right? I'm looking for a yellow. So as a matter of fact, one way we even write this, we write P of yellow. By writing this, I'm basically saying that's the probability of yellow. In this case, because it's marbles, what's the probability of selecting a yellow marble? Okay, so I have 8 marbles, right? 8 marbles that are yellow. So I'm gonna let this equal to, I have 8. I'm gonna write this as a fraction first. I have 8 favorable marbles or 8 favorable outcomes. Now, how many marbles do I have altogether? Remember, I have eight of them are yellow and 9 of them are orange. So I'm gonna say altogether I have 17 marbles. Let me grab my calculator. I'm gonna grab my calculator here at the side and I'm gonna go 8 divided by 17. According to my calculator, I get 0.470588. Okay, so I have it as a fraction and I have it as a decimal. Let me take a look at the instructions now. So let me continue reading this. Submit your answer as an exact fraction, as well as a decimal and a percentage. Now, both rounded to the hundreds place. Okay. So let me go with fraction first. Let me answer this in blue so we can tell the difference. So my fraction is 8 over 17. The way I'm going to type 8 over 17, I'm going to go 8 backslash 17 all together. Okay, no spaces, so make sure you guys don't type any spaces. 8 backslash 17. One thing I do ask you though, simplify your fraction if possible. Right, we learned how to simplify fractions back in the days when you guys were taking algebra. You guys are in statistics now, so I don't have to specify. I don't have to teach you guys how to simplify a fraction, but make sure you do simplify a fraction. So something like 6 over 8, you call that 3 over 4. Right? Make sure you simplify your fraction. In this case, I cannot simplify anymore, so that's it. So when it says submit it as a fraction, I'm going to call it 8 over 17. Again, simplify if possible. When it says answer as a decimal, So I'm gonna answer this as a decimal, but it also says rounded to the hundredths place. Hundreds. Now hundreds sounds like 100. Or 100 has 2 zeros, right? The number 100 has 2 zeros, so the hundredths place means 2 decimal places. I will still look at the third decimal place just in case I have to round things up. You know how to round. So I'm gonna say in this case, as a decimal, my answer will be 0.47. I rounded to 2 decimal places because it asked me to round it to the nearest hundreds. So 0.47. Now it also asked me to do it as a percentage. I'm gonna do this as a percentage and I'm gonna round my answer to the nearest hundreds. Now, what do I do for my percentage? The decimal that I have, remember the long decimal that my calculator gave me? This whole decimal, I'm going to multiply this by 100. Or just easily move the decimal 2 places to the right. So it's here, multiply by 100, and he moves a decimal here. So as a percentage, I'm looking at 47 point something. Now I have to round it to the nearest hundredths. So 2 decimal places. My answer in this case will be 47.06. So I can answer this as a fraction, as a percent, as a decimal, or as a percent. The decimal and the percentage round both to the nearest hundreds. All right, let's take a look at here the next question. You're randomly playing songs in a playlist. Okay, so I have a list of songs. My list has 7 songs that are jazz, 6 are electronic, 6 are rock, 5 songs are pop, and 6 of them are Bollywood. What is the probability? Let me start reading this. Let me highlight this. What is the probability of selecting either a Bollywood song or a jazz song? Okay. Interesting part here, I have the word or. Okay, so I'm gonna be looking at the cases of Bollywood and jazz, and then I'm gonna add them up. We're gonna deal with some cases when we have the word and. We're gonna see those in a minute. But right now, looking at the or, so I'm gonna add. I know for Bollywood, I have 6 of them. I have 6 songs that are Bollywood, and I have 7 songs that are jazz. So what I'm going to do, I'm just gonna add those two, the Bollywood songs and the jazz songs, and I'm gonna say my favorable outcome is 13. I just added the Bollywood songs and the jazz songs. So favorable outcome is 13 divided by, so I have this as over. How many songs do I have altogether? So I have 7 are jazz, 6 are electronic, so 7 plus 6 plus 6 plus 5 and plus 6. When I add all the possible songs, there's 30 of them. So 13 is my favorable outcome. 30 is the possible outcome. There's 30 songs. I grab my calculator and I go, okay, 13 divided by 30. I look at my calculator and it says 0.4333 and a bunch of threes. Okay, now in red, let me answer this. I have to submit my answer as a fraction. Okay, my fraction is 13 over 30. Simplify if possible. In this case, I cannot simplify more. So I'm gonna call this 13 over 30. Remember, I'm using the backslash as a fraction. So 13 over 30. Simplify the fraction if possible. Then my next thing, I have to answer this as a decimal, rounded to the hundredths place. So, okay, I see my decimal here. So 0.4 and a bunch of threes. Hundreds means 2 decimal places. So I do take a look at the third decimal place. It is small. So my answer will be 0.43. And I have to answer this also as a percentage, rounded to the hundredths place. So remember what I do is I look at my decimal, multiply this by 100. Basically, multiplying by 100 will make me move my decimal 2 places to the right. So it's right here. So it's 43 point something. I'm going to round this to 2 decimal places. So my answer will be 43.33. Notice on my decimal and my percentage, I rounded each to the nearest hundredths. So that means 2 decimal places. Now, sample space, you guys see how we have the space for sample space, is the set of all the possible outcomes. There's 3 ways how we can do this. The sample space, we can do it as a list of the possible outcomes. Now, every time I do a list, I'm going to put it inside brackets, but the brackets I'm going to put is like this. And then inside I'm going to put all the possible outcomes. For example, I could ask you guys, what are the possible outcomes? Let's think of the list of all the names of the students in this class. And then I provided you with the names of all of the students in this class. Well, we were just going to list the names in there. Or I asked you, okay, think of the numbers from 1 through 9, whole numbers only. So you're going to do like 1, 2, 3, all the way to 9, right? So in there, my sample space, I can do that as a list. So make sure we use the brackets. We can also use the tree diagram or a Venn diagram. We're going to see the tree diagram in a minute. Now, one thing, I'm going to use the words or and. So let me emphasize the word or and. When I say the word or, because I might give you guys 2 lists. I might give you guys more than one list, more than one possible outcomes. In order for value to be a possible outcome, when I say or, it has to be in at least one of the list. Okay? So again, I might give you guys 2 separate lists. Let's say I have the numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then here I have the numbers 3, 5, 7. Let's say I gave you 2 lists. If I say the word or, as long as it is in one of the list, it is a possible outcome. So the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 are possible outcomes. Notice I said as long as it is in one of the list. Now, if I use the word and, it has to be in both. So in this case, the only possible outcome is 3. If I use the word and. So let me say that again. Or, as long as it is in one list, it is a possible outcome. If I use the word and, it has to be on both possible lists. It has to be in both lists to be a possible outcome. All right, let's take a look here. Given the sample space, determine the subset that makes up the event described, entered in set notation. Okay, set notations basically use the brackets that I said. One sample space is the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then from those numbers, let me choose. One of my things here, it says the number is even. So I can choose a number that is even or a number that is a factored of 8. Okay, factor. That's a fancy word. Factored. Remember, factors are the numbers that I can divide. In this case, numbered is a factor of 8. So 8 divided by a factor gives me a whole number. So for example, 2 is a factor of 8 because 8 divided by 2 gives me a whole number. Right? 4 is also a factor of 8 because 8 divided by 4 gives me a whole number. Now 3 is not a factor because 8 divided by 3 does not give me a whole number. Okay, but in this case, I use the word or. Remember, I'm going to use or and. So first of all, I see, okay, the number is even. So from my sample space, the number is even. I have the numbers 2, 4, 6, and 8. Right? Those are the numbers that are even on my sample space. When I look at the other list, the number is a factor of 8. So I'm thinking, all right, what are the factors of 8? 1, 2, 4, and 8. Remember, what is a factor of 8 is 8 divided by one of its factors will give me a whole number. Right? 8 divided by 1, 8 divided by 2, 8 divided by 4, 8 divided by 8. All those are factors of 8 because 8 divided by a factor will give me a whole number. All right. So I saw each of my cases, each of my possible outcomes, or my favorable outcomes. Now here for my answer, let me do this in red. I'm gonna start my bracket. And as a matter of fact, on you guys' case for your homework, you will see that I have the brackets already included. And then I have a space in between the brackets. That's how I'm gonna give you guys your homework. I want you to fill in the possible choices. So because I'm using the word or, as long as it is one of the list, it is okay. So I ask myself, is the number 1 in one of my list? Yes. Comma. The next number is 2, comma. Now 3, I don't see 3 in any of my list. And when I say any of my list, I'm looking at these 2. Okay, I don't see 3. I see 4. I don't see 5, 6, no 7, and 8. Now, one thing, notice how I separated each of my numbers with a comma. Notice I have a comma in between each of my numbers. And another thing, I did not put any spaces in between. It's all together. So when you guys type this in, let me emphasize with black. This bracket's already given. You just have to write in the space inside. So in this case, 1, 2, 4, 6, 8. When I use the word or, what I did first, I separated my list in 2 subsets. These 2 subsets. Right? I listed my numbers that were even from the sample space. I listed my factors of 8 from my sample space. So I listed my 2 subsets. A subset is basically a set that comes from the sample space. And because I use the word or, it has to be, in order for me to write it on my final answer, it has to be in at least one of the subsets. If I use the word and, it has to be in both subsets. So in this case, for example, if I had used the word and, the number is even, and the number is factor of 8, I would have included only 2, 4, 8. Only the numbers 2, 4, 8. All right. Now, let's take a look at what I called a tree diagram. Now, a tree diagram, diagram basically is a picture. And tree, well, kind of think of a tree. You know, there's the trunk on the tree. So there's a beginning, and from the trunk, so from the beginning, branches start coming out. So here, my example says there's a picture frame brand that offers 3 different colors: red, silver, or gray. And then there's 4 shapes: diamond, oval, circle. Okay, let's call that different oval. So let me change this. So diamond, oval, circle, and let's change this. I had a typo here. I guess I typed in oval twice. Let's call this rectangle. So it's either red, silver, or gray. And my 4 shapes are diamond, oval, circle, or rectangle. Okay, those are the shapes that I can get. If you're choosing one at random, what is a possible tree diagram to display the different combinations of frames and colors? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to draw myself. Let's say I'm right here. All right, I'm going to draw myself there. Now, on your choices, you don't have to draw yourself. So I'm not, you're not going to draw that. But from there, first thing I do is I ask myself, how many choices do I have on the first choice? And then I see, okay, I have three different colors. Okay, so I'm gonna go three different choices. One of them is red, one of them is silver, and then one of them is gray. And then I have four different choices: diamond, oval, circle, or rectangle. So this is my second choice. So I'm not gonna start from the beginning. So I'm not gonna start from me. I'm not gonna start from there. I'm gonna start from each of these cases. I'm gonna have four shapes. So for each of these cases, let me go four choices. So there's one, two, three, four. From my silver, let me go one, two, three, four. And from grade, one, two, three, four. Now for red, my shapes are diamond, oval, circle, and rectangle. Now to not waste your time, let me make diamond, oval, circle, rectangle appeared on each of my blue segments. So let me do some magic here because I want everything to just appear. There. Boom. Everything just appeared. I really just paused the video. I wrote what I needed to write and then I continue my video. That's how I do my magic. Okay, so everything there. Now, how many possible choices do I have? Right, I have three different colors and I have four different shapes. Now, how many possible frames can I create? Then I'm gonna say 12. One of them could be a red diamond, red oval, red circle, red rectangle, a silver diamond, a silver oval, silver circle, silver rectangle, gray diamond, gray oval, gray circle, gray rectangle. Notice I have 12 different choices. That's pretty much it. That's how we do the tree diagram. From the tree diagram, I could ask you guys many questions. What's the probability? So let me just do an example here. I will say, what's the probability that, let me move this up here. What's the probability that I get a red circle? Well, I have only one red circle, right? There's 12 possible choices. I'm gonna say 1 out of 12. What's the probability that I get a silver? Well, there's four frames that are silver, right? Have a silver diamond, a silver oval, silver circle, silver rectangle. There's four possible silvers, but there's 12 altogether. So I'm gonna call this 1/3. Notice I simplify my fraction. So see, I can ask you guys for many, many questions from your tree diagram. So that's how we do this. That's simple.